how Britain wiped out the entire French colonies in North America. In the early 17th century, Britain and France were locked in a fierce contest for colonial dominance over the North American continent. France had established a stronghold across the interior, centered around Louisiana, while Britain was steadily expanding its influence along the Atlantic coastline and into southern Canada. Caught between these two European powers were the indigenous peoples of North America, including major groups like the Iroquois Confederacy and the Cherokee. Faced with mounting pressure from encroaching colonizers, these native nations had to make difficult political choices to ensure their survival. At the time, Britain held the upper hand economically and industrially. It supplied high-quality trade goods in an effort to secure native alliances. France, on the other hand, sought to overcome its weaker position through cultural immersion, living like the natives, marrying into their communities, and respecting their customs. This strategy earned them considerable goodwill. However, the Iroquois, the most powerful native alliance, chose to remain neutral, leveraging the rivalry between the two empires to their advantage. Eventually, the Iroquois could no longer stand on the sidelines. Faced with growing threats, they aligned with Britain, tipping the balance of power in North America. Britain, emboldened by this silent endorsement, expanded its trading posts deeper into contested territory. France viewed this expansion with suspicion, fearing it was a cover for full-scale colonization. In 1753, France responded by building fortifications near the Ohio Valley. In retaliation, Britain sent a young military officer, George Washington, to check their advance. On May 27, 1754, Washington launched a surprise attack against a French unit. The skirmish resulted in the death of French commander Jumonville and the capture of many of his men. This incident marked the official outbreak of what would later be known as the French and Indian War. Praised as a hero, Washington was quickly promoted after his superior's unexpected death, but his victory was short-lived. France, determined to strike back, began massing troops near Pittsburgh. On July 3, 1754, around 700 French and native warriors surrounded Washington's hastily built fort. Outnumbered and plagued by disease, Washington had no choice but to surrender and retreat. In the following years, France gained the upper hand. British forces suffered repeated defeats, losing hundreds of troops, including colonial commanders. Desperate for manpower, the British Crown began conscripting colonists and seizing supplies without compensation, sparking outrage throughout the colonies. Many colonists refused to participate in the war, pushing Britain to revise its policies and promise payment and autonomy in recruitment. With internal conflicts calmed, Britain launched a counteroffensive. In 1758, they captured the key fortress of Louisbourg, taking thousands of prisoners. Meanwhile, France's attempt to land troops in Britain failed, and multiple naval losses weakened their position further. By 1759, the British prepared for a final push toward Quebec. Deploying 4,500 men, British forces quietly scaled steep cliffs to reach the Plains of Abraham just outside Quebec's walls. France scrambled to defend the city with 3,500 soldiers. On September 13th, a brutal battle erupted. The well-trained and numerically superior British army overwhelmed the French, forcing them to retreat and abandon Quebec. This victory became the decisive turning point in the war. In 1760, British forces encircled Montreal with 18,000 troops. With no hope of victory, France surrendered unconditionally. By 1763, the global conflict known as the 7 Years' War came to an end. In the resulting peace treaty, France ceded Canada, its holdings in India, and all territory east of the Mississippi River, including Louisiana, to Britain. The western portion of Louisiana was handed over to Spain. France had lost virtually all its North American colonies. Britain emerged with vast new lands, but also an enormous war debt. When British citizens resisted new taxes, the government turned its eyes to the American colonies. These colonists, who had contributed little to the war effort, yet frequently voiced complaints, became the prime targets for revenue collection. This decision would spark a new fire. The growing tensions between a controlling British government and colonies demanding freedom would soon erupt into a new and even more transformative conflict, the American Revolution.